At the absolute center of the multiverse sits a city of rusted iron and smog that functions as an inescapable cosmic prison. This diagram outlines the Outlands. At the center stands the infinitely tall spire, suspending a torus-shaped structure at its peak. Sigil is built exclusively along the inner curve, its sky replaced by opposite streets. Stepping off the edge plunges you into a random plane. Because of this inverted architecture, every resident is physically forced to look inward, staring constantly at their neighbors across the curve. The geometry itself engineers an environment of permanent, inescapable claustrophobia. You cannot hike up the spire and stroll through the city gates. Walking into or out of Sigil on foot is physically impossible. Instead, the city relies entirely on an overlapping network of portals. Any bounded physical space, a rusted sewer grate, a wooden barrel hoop, or an ordinary tavern door, can secretly serve as a gateway to another reality. These mundane frames remain dormant until someone passes through holding a highly specific physical key. That key could be a silver coin, a piece of bone, or even a specific tune hummed at the exact right moment. An unsuspecting citizen who steps through an everyday doorway while accidentally carrying an active key can instantly plunge straight into the abyss. The sheer unpredictability of these exits traps citizens through sheer geographical paranoia. When walking down the street carries a lethal risk, the safest choice is to stay exactly where you are. The people living in these cramped, overlapping, smog-choked streets are largely stranded refugees. They survive in a space where new structures are constantly built directly over the old. Control of these narrow corridors is divided among the factions. They present themselves as philosophical debaters, but in practice they operate as brutal street gangs, dividing the city into strictly controlled sectors. To fortify these borders, they cultivate razorvine. Growing up to a foot a day, this black weed possesses stems so sharp they slice through armor, bleeding intruders to death in seconds. With physical space at a premium, the factions use these environmental hazards to bleed each other for every inch of territory. These ideological turf wars force the populace to turn their aggression on one another. An inmate who is focused on surviving a gang war is an inmate who never questions the silence of their warden. By an absolute law of the city's architecture, deities, gods, and archfiends are physically and magically barred from entering the city limits. Any prayer or plea made within Sigil drops into a vacuum. No higher power can hear them, and no divine intervention will answer. Yet low-level magic still functions perfectly well. The inhabitants retain exactly enough power to harm one another, while remaining completely incapable of breaking through the city's dimensional constraints. This ban on gods provides no protection for the citizens. It is an isolation tactic. It strips away all hope, leaving the population entirely alone and defenseless against the city's actual authority. That central authority is the Lady of Pain. She does not issue decrees, sit on a throne, or even speak. She simply hovers above the streets, enclosed in a mantle of floating blades, constantly watching the city. Her surveillance network is maintained by the Dabus, a mute workforce that tends to the city's crumbling infrastructure. As they patch the brickwork and prune the razorvine, they act as her omnipresent eyes and ears. She enforces only two rules: maintain the peace of the city, and never, under any circumstances, worship her as a god. Because her silent gaze could be anywhere, the citizens are terrified into violently policing their very own neighbors. The paranoia does the work for her, completing a perfect, self-sustaining panopticon. If someone crosses her, or accidentally brushes against her shadow in the street, the physical punishment is immediate. They are instantaneously flayed alive by unseen blades. But a quick death is a mercy compared to the punishment reserved for those who attempt to usurp her control. Silent banishment to the lady's mazes. This diagram maps the mazes, inescapable, extra-dimensional labyrinths floating isolated in the ethereal plane, disconnected from the city. When Duke Rowan Darkwood tried to seize control, he was discarded into one of these labyrinths to rot in solitary madness for half a millennium. Sigil is a masterpiece of authoritarian design. Within this ring, every street and every doorway serves the same ultimate purpose: ensuring that no matter where you hide, you are always being watched.